have, in fact, kept close tabs on those who we believe have left and those who've come back. A number have been arrested or investigated, and we have systems in place to track these individuals, but you can't know everything.
Startling comments from the Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson. With Miranda Khan, J.D. Hayworth, Miranda, terror groups such as ISIS are advocating lone wolf attacks by Americans in America.
Yeah, and as the nature of terror appears to be changing with this new push for lone wolves, it has some asking, is our strategy on how to combat them changing along with it?
Joining us for more on this story, we're pleased to welcome in another J.D. J.D. Gordon of J.D. Gordon Communications, also a former spokesman at the Pentagon. He is in Washington via Skype, and also, of course, in Washington at Newsmax Washington, our good friend Ford O'Connell. So, J.D., you know Jay Johnson. He was over at the Pentagon for a time when you were there, and he goes on 60 Minutes and says, what, there are at least 40 ISIS recruits who are back in the United States?
Hey, JD, that's right. It's very disturbing. It's an alarming. You know, a couple months ago, Al-Shabaab, the Somali terror group that just carried out that attack in Kenya, they threatened Mall of America in Minnesota. And we know that about 180 Americans have gone over to fight with the Islamic State. Dozens of those are from the Somali American community in Minnesota. It's a real threat. And you know what? We can't be safe because it could happen anywhere. The terrorists have to be right once. We have to be right every time.
Well, JD, you make a great point. We can barely track our illegal immigrants coming back and forth over the border. What should the U.S. be doing to better track these folks that are coming there and back? Because honestly, if we miss this once, you know what it could be? It could be another 9/11.
It could be another 9/11, or it could be more lone wolf types attacks. It's like a wolf pack. They may seem lone when they carry out the attack, but it's the ideology that they have this pack mentality. I think we should be ensuring that our law enforcement authorities and our intelligence authorities have all the tools they can to detect these type of plots and to break them up before they happen. But we got to get to the source. We've got to stop this ideology coming out of Saudi Arabia and Iran. Otherwise, it's going to be whack-a-mole for generations. We've got to pressure Saudi Arabia, Iran, countries like that, to change their blasphemy laws, change their textbooks, have gender equality. We've got to fix those basic root causes of the problems. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to be attacked by these radical Islam terror groups.
So I have to ask you then, because you brought up Iran, what do you think about the framework of this deal?
I don't think it's a very helpful deal at all. It just delays Iran's nuclear weapons program. It doesn't stop it whatsoever. It doesn't deal with warhead development. It doesn't deal with missile technology. It basically just kicks the can down the road. So President Obama might be able to say, sure, I stopped Iran from getting a nuclear weapon during his term, but then they'll probably get one shortly thereafter anyway. So it's a very bad deal for America.
So while the administration is focused on negotiating with Iran, J.D., correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a very simple solution to keep these ISIS guys from coming back in the country, and that's for Congress to pass legislation saying you go join ISIS, boom, there goes your American citizenship. Should the Congress do that, and do you think the president would sign a bill like that?
JD, absolutely. That's one step that could happen. But the president might not sign something like that. I would hope he would, but you never really can tell where the president's going to come down on these things. Look, he's trying to release as many al-Qaeda and Taliban terrorists from Guantanamo as possible, even though he knows that nearly 1 out of 3 return to terrorism. So you really can't count on the president to keep us safe, unfortunately.
JD, we got 20 seconds left. Rand Paul wants to get rid of the NSA. How valuable is the NSA in tracking these guys?
The NSA is invaluable. I don't think we should change the NSA program. You know, Edward Snowden was just interviewed by John Oliver on HBO. I recommend people take a look at it to put it in context. We need the NSA. We need all the intelligence we can get to stop these plots.
Well, J.D., we're going to stop right here on that discussion, but we want you to stay with us. Not only do I enjoy having a guy with whom I share initials and point of view on a lot of things, but also when we come back, you know, we just had a great veteran story about a new company, Street Shares. There's something less than noble going on with one of the Veterans Administration bureaucrats, and we know that you've been kind of bird dogging that story for us, so we want to talk about that when we continue here on this Wednesday morning on Newsmax TV.
Half of the veterans were dead that I screened. So almost every other piece of paper that I touched was a veteran who had already passed away. We pulled 15 indiscriminately to look at, just 15. 8 of them were owed money. 1 was owed $36,000. They took them, they put them in a file, and they stuffed them away.
Rusty Ann Brown, a whistleblower from the Oakland, California Veterans Benefits Office. Rusty Ann's story, just another example of the widespread mismanagement that continues to plague the VA system.
And as veterans continue to die waiting for care, there's a shocking new report that's raising some concerns about how the VA is spending its money. The report claims a high-ranking Veterans Affairs official was given almost $300,000 in relocation costs to move from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia.
Well, we got to move this along. Let's continue the conversation with J.D. Gordon of the eponymously named J.D. Gordon Communications and our good friend Republican strategist Ford O'Connell. So, J.D., we hear this $300K to relocate. Is this standard operating procedure for a lot of muckety-mucks over at VA?
JD, this is outrageous. I hope it's not SOP for them, but you know what? It raises a lot of alarm bells. This official, Deputy Undersecretary Diana Rubens, apparently got almost $300,000 to move from Washington to Philadelphia. One of the reasons she did that is because she put her house on the market in Alexandria, Virginia for $100,000 more than she paid for it just 6 years before, and $100,000 more than market value. This is the reason why it's personally upsetting to me, too, because that's my real estate market. Last year, I tried to sell my place, and I found out that it was worth $10,000 less than what I paid when I went to the Pentagon in 2005. So she knew that her home was worth less than what she paid for it, yet she still put it on the market for $100,000. And she did that because she knew that the government would bail her out and pay the costs. And they did. Basically, she made about $70,000 on this deal.
JD, this is outrageous, but how come nobody's been fired and no one on Capitol Hill wants to give the VA an audit from top to bottom? It seems like everyone's outraged, but no one's doing anything.
Ford, you're absolutely right. There is an IG investigation into her right now about what she did, but I think this is a systemic problem. You know, the VA doesn't have a funding problem. Their budget for 2016 is over $160 billion. They have an attitude problem. They have to be fixed top to bottom. I think it's serious time we talk about privatizing the VA because this cannot stand. We've got veterans dying on these secret wait lists, but yet a high-ranking bureaucrat gets paid $300,000 to move from D.C. to Philly. It's outrageous. We shouldn't stand for it. We've got to fix the VA.
JD, isn't the real issue, though, the appraised value offer program? Because
that's part of the problem, yeah. Miranda,
right.
You're right.
Explain how that works, because I'm reading this article about it, and it's saying that basically you have to have realtors, 2 different realtors, appraise this home. So
right, that's absolutely right. So where she lives in Alexandria, she listed it for $799,000. She paid $697,000 for it in 2008. So for appraisals in neighborhoods with those type of mansions, essentially, it's very hard to get an accurate comp. Where I live in Fairlington, where there's condos and townhouses. It's easy to get an accurate comp. Where she lives, it's not accurate to get an equal comparison. So that was part of the problem here.
But this whole appraisal situation, is this just the luck of the draw, or do you think there's some sort of inside racket going on with this thing, a separate type of appraisal for these high-ranking bureaucrats and another for everybody else? We got about 30 seconds.
It could be, JD. There's an IG investigation that Chairman Miller in the House has called for. So hopefully that'll find it out if it was some inside deal where people were profiting off of this other than her, or whether it was just a bad, flawed system. But the VA's got to be changed top to bottom.
Well, we will have to bring in Congressman Jeff Miller. We won't subpoena him. We don't have that power here. Yeah. He's chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee there in the House of Representatives. J.D. Gordon, we thank you as always. Stay on top of these stories and come back to see us real soon. I got a funny feeling with all that's going on, JD will be back real soon.
I think you're definitely right about that.
Some of the news today has been very upsetting, but when we come back, we'll try to leave you with a smile on your face.
I'm smiling.
Cool, you sure are.